My name is Franklin and welcome to this knowledge sharing session. Today we have a guest speaker who has a lot of achievements with a lot of capital letters in it. Speaking of which, he is a gold medalist in mechanical engineering. He holds an MS research degree in computer-aided design with the prestigious Indian Institute of Technology, popularly known as IIT, and has done his management program in change management. He is a founder, chairman of SA Business Solutions, founded in 1999, currently serving as mentor in SA. He is a CEO coach, mentor for leadership teams, and also earned his reputation of a transformation catalyst. He is a blogger who shares his wisdom and knowledge to many subjects, such as spirituality, music. He is a reader and also an author of many books. He has authored on many management topics such as Enigma of Lead, Six Sigma in a Nutshell, and Statistical Guide. One of his popular one is Pragmatic Leadership, which is about three aspects of leadership that is very important for a career growth, about which he is going to speak today. With no further delay, presenting Mr. N.C. Narayanan.
Good evening to everyone who are present in spite of your busy schedules. This morning I heard one nice statement from one of my old colleagues from New Zealand that when you try to convey some topics of this kind, say in our case is leadership, it should be in plain English or plain language, what they say, which is an upcoming thought process. That when you are trying to convey something which is probably little complex in nature and everybody understands in their own way. So I would like to make this particular session of 45 minutes duration in a plain language as much as I can. This particular book titled as Pragmatic Leadership, which is the topic of today's evening, and why this book was written and what was the research I carried out is what I am going to talk to you this evening. When you say pragmatic leadership, it essentially means that the practical way of grooming your leadership capabilities. And this book was published in 2015 by McGraw Education and is available in Amazon. Such of those who are keen to go through this book, I would appreciate. After this session, if you are motivated, you may like to consider. And also there are quite a number of YouTube presentations I have made on the excerpts of this book. So I will share some of these links with Mr. Akil, and then you can probably access them and see them at your leisure time. Now, before I deep dive into the topic of leadership, I think this term leadership has been interpreted depending upon the age, experience and positions, etc., which I am going to bring a different perspective for a growing youngsters. I am sure that most of the people who are listening on this evening may all belong to a very ambitious younger generation and then aspiring for growing in the organizational ladder. So let me give you some perspective that why I wrote this book in the first instant. And I grew up in the post-independence era and went through a little bit of struggle in my corporate career. And later on I felt that what was the reason I got stuck at different positions and why I could not grow to the pinnacle of the organizational ladder. It was one of the curiosity that went in my mind, and also because of my extensive interest on the side of psychology and the spirituality, observations of life as a whole, I thought I must try to write a book which will help many of the particularly younger and middle-aged people for grooming their own leadership capabilities. So you will not find anything dramatically technical in this program because as I mentioned that I want to talk on a plain language. So one of the aspects that many of the people who are pursuing their career, they become technical expert. So in the same way, I went into an automobile engineering company after my mechanical engineering graduation, and then I grew as a chief technology officer over a period of time, but I could not become a business leader as a CEO, which was a big longing for me because I spent almost 30 years in the corporate career. And then last 22 years, I founded this organization and developed it as a global consulting company. So I was wondering before I wrote this book, why I could not become a business leader and I grew up as a technical expert. Why we need to discuss this, which is what the subject of discussion today. So I grew up a little bit curious after observing a lot of business leaders. There are three ways I was just trying to investigate this topic of leadership. One is the science of management, because being a management graduate and I did my post-graduation on change management. And then last 22 years I've been doing CEO coaching and mentoring and development of leadership and so on. So one of the dimensions I brought about in this study of, you may call it as a research, is looking at from the science of management. And being a spiritual enthusiast, I also looked at human behavior from the spirituality point of view. And also I had a team of psychologists who worked with me and then looked at the science of psychology of human behavior. So this research has led me to put them together in the form of a book, which I would call it as a cookbook for leadership. Let me give you some excerpts of that book. So in the last 22 years of my consulting career, I also dealt with a lot of political leaders like Nanaji Deshmukh, who was a social enthusiast who died at the age of 93, and people like Satish Jamdar, who was the managing director of Blue Star. So during my consulting career, I was closely interacting with some of the top leaders, and then I was closely observing them, what kind of qualities they have developed and why they are where they are. And that is what the basis on which I wrote this book, which will be very interesting for growing youngsters. Now, when I was getting trained on the leadership aspects from the Western world, so leadership is seen more as a theory and model as far as the Western world is concerned. And as you could see from here, one of the visual, it says that leadership is a question of leaders are born. That means unless you are born with the leadership quality, you may not be able to lead. So here I want to clarify one aspect. When we say leadership, what comes to our mind is the topmost position in the company as a CEO or the CXOs, etc. But when I say leadership, I am talking about a way of thinking and working at any level in the organization. So when I did the research from the Indian paradigm point of view, I realized that human beings are born with a lot of distinctive faculties. And then what my research showed is that leaders are self-developed. I'm going to give you some perspective going forward. Why I'm saying that leaders are not born, they are self-developed. So let me deep dive into the topic little further. See, the Western paradigm, particularly in the US, children are brought up with a kind of a training that you have to die as a millionaire. And a leader is a boss who commands and then controls people. So this is the paradigm on which the leadership is being considered in the Western world. That means becoming a superhuman being must be the agenda. That means one can aspire to become a superhuman being over a period of time. But what I found in the Indian paradigm is a leader is the one who creates prosperity for everyone. And leader creates the future world is what actually is the assumption. So as Sadhguru always used to say, being human is super. You don't need to become a superhuman being, but if you are born as a human being, that itself means that you are a super creation. So let us look at it little more detail in the context of pragmatic leadership philosophy. So based on all these 30 years of corporate life and 22 years of management consulting worldwide, there are certain revelations what I got. Let me share some of them with you. You will notice that right from childhood, as I put it in this visual, human beings have become a bundle of various information stored in our conscious and subconscious mind. So what psychology says is that, so primarily the parental conditioning is one thing that creates our personality. And also we have our own self-hypnosis, which is constantly we program ourselves. As many people feel I am an introvert or I am not good in presenting or articulation, etc. We have our own self-hypnosis, which is also causing certain level of conditioning. And then we have a social conditioning, essentially the kind of environment we are born. People born at a different region has got a different kind of personalities. And then we have the educational conditioning. If you are an engineer, we behave differently. If you are a non-engineer, we behave differently. If you are a chartered accountant, we behave differently. So with the result, the human being is becoming a bundle of various behavioral aspects which are coming out of conditioning. Let's stay with this as we go along. I will build this topic in much more deeper sense. One interesting aspect, as you could see from this visual, there is a why, how and what. Now let me explain what I really meant by this. When we were a small baby, they said we need to drink milk. That what is to be done was told to us. And later on when we became a little bigger boy, they taught us how to drink milk. But very few parents have explained the children why we need to drink milk. That means our entire upbringing is not coming from the why, which is called a golden triangle, and then how and what is being explained to us. I grew up in engineering companies. They say know-how is given by the foreign companies, and how to build motor cars we know, but we don't know why part of the many engineering aspects. So this is a very important aspect of parental conditioning, social conditioning, which has resulted in a different kind of personality of human beings. If you look at the parental conditioning, which I thought I will probably share something with you, we have been told that you must study well and get good grades, and then you should acquire degree from premium colleges, and you must get a good job and then get good salary, and you must earn more money, and then you should be socially recognized. So these are all what we have been learning from parental conditioning, with which our life runs on these motivations. So if you look at into a little more detail why these leadership capabilities are not being developed, one of the reasons is we have been taught only survival skills. Whether you are a caveman or you are a modern child, the most of the teachings are only survival. So this is what one aspect that I want you to keep in mind going forward as I develop the concept of pragmatic leadership. And then all of us spent in the college almost 20 to 25 years, and whatever that we have been told or we have been trained, they are all mostly information. So a lorry load of information we got throughout our education. Many of them have no applicability as far as our current job is concerned. So that is the folly of the educational system, and going forward we will know how these things are affecting the personality of an individual. And then once we come into a career, and then the HR department is trying to arrange so many behavioral competencies. I don't want to get into the detail. Interpersonal relationship, convincing skills, presentation skills and leadership skills, listening skills and so on. Now the most important aspect is why these skills, life skills are most important, have not been covered either by the parental conditioning, they have not been covered in the social conditioning, and they have not given in the educational pursuits. So this is one of the most important discovery when I was trying to see why many people are not able to make progress in their career. So in other words, when we assume certain organizational leadership positions, there are so many skills are there which I am going to cover some of them. They have not been imparted to us as a part of our upbringing. And the age of 23 to 30, the most important formative years of our life, we struggle to establish and then compete with the people around. So that is what is the scenario, yes. So in other words, probably it may sound little philosophical, but stay with me. You will get some fresh insights as we go along. So here I put an illustration. There is a small elephant which is tied up in a tree. I believe that it cannot break the rope. Even if it has grown as a lofty elephant, it never tries to break the rope, although it can uproot the tree. So this shows that our conditioning plays a very important role in our personality, and then it is becoming an impediment for us to make progress in our career. This is what my findings are. And compared to the last 70 years, you will find in the last 20 years or so, there has been a lot of disruptive forces are coming, technological developments, phenomenal transformation, Industry 4.0, IoT, artificial intelligence and machine learning, and I don't know, there is a mind-boggling kind of a transformation. Skill sets are coming on board. As a child engineer or a young engineer, whatever challenges I faced is going to be much more complex for the next generation to face in this world. So in summary, that it's a time to change, and COVID-19 virtually challenged the entire human value systems and paradigms, and many of the challenges faced by human beings were never experienced before. So having said that, change is the only constant in life. That's what Heraclitus said 2500 years ago. But what to change, how to change, when to change is $1 million question. So having said that, let us look at the evolution little bit, what Darwin said, and the subsequent developments, which is very important, which I have described in my book. Science says this entire universe came from Big Bang 14.8 billion years ago. And then we had minerals formed in the early stages. Then they become plantation little later. And subsequently animals came into existence, and then human beings. Now if you see the evolution in the last 13.8 billion years, you will find that the evolution is moving from less intelligent and less conscious being to more intelligent and more conscious creations. So why are we looking at this? I am trying to bring in the concept of pragmatic leadership essentially. So the animals have got a bottom line and top line. They have got only 5 instincts, and they have no other capability to innovate anything or create anything which was not there in this planet. But whereas if you look at the cerebral capabilities of human being, it is mind-boggling. And the science says that human beings are using only 1% of their brain power. 99% of the brain powers are not utilized. For the very simple reason, if you buy an iPhone, for example, we are not even using 1% of the total kind of a functionality that has been incorporated in that gadget. So, This is what actually is the subject of interest to us in the context of pragmatic leadership. So, looking at the transformation eons in the last maybe 5,000 years, you have the gravity invented by Isaac Newton, and that later on the energy forces have been discovered in the 17th century, 18th century, saw the engineering technology and industrial revolution, and computer came into existence in 1975, and then internet came in 1995, and then the whole world of information has completely revolutionized. And going forward, they say that all this artificial intelligence and everything is going to completely transform this world. That means the environmental pressure for every individual has to be very clear about that it become more competitive. Systems will change. I think in the last 2 years, our own system of life in this online work at home and using technology has completely revolutionized the way in which our lifestyle is going. So that means the culture ultimately gets influenced. That means if anyone is not aware of the surrounding changes and then take stock of their own personality, will be left behind. So what I noticed in my research is there are people who don't want to change, but they want to prosper in their life. Unfortunately, prosperity is the result of change. And then we have a conflicting requirement that we don't want to change, but we want prosperity. With the result that people are belonging to three categories. Some category who are the victim of changes. That means they are left behind. Those who have learned the age-old Fortran or Cobalt program are no longer required, unless otherwise they have come into the onlookers of change who are constantly observing what is the change that is happening. And there are certain percentage of the people who have taken charge of change, and they make the change as their leadership qualities. So it's only a human choice which is very important for us to consider when you want to groom ourselves as a pragmatic leader. So having said that, I thought I will give you some perspective of this excerpts of this concept of pragmatic leadership. What is pragmatic leadership? What I kept in my mind is, if you are very sensitive of observing the behavior of many of the resources that we have in our life, we will be able to groom ourselves with a certain leadership qualities with which we will be able to make a significant progress in our career. I am not promising that everybody will become a CEO, but wherever we are, we will definitely make a significance and then we will move forward. So that is the philosophy of pragmatic leadership is all about. We have a choice whether you want to become a follower or you want to become a leader. Now there are certain fundamental aspects which are very important to consider. What is the purpose of life as we have been conditioned? So why we are doing what we are doing is we want to create wealth, we want to gain power, and we want to be famous. So this is the fundamental motivation of every human being. And then ultimately we want to leave something for the legacy. That is, whatever that we create, that has to become make this world as a better place. So by and large, you will find all human beings are driven by this motivation. But very interestingly, when I was trying to classify people are classified into three categories. Some people are predominantly obsessed with the past memory. That means their whole life is governed by what happened in their life. On the other hand, there are people who are constantly trying to imagine about the future, what they can create. And there are people who have decided neither future or past is important, the present moment is most important. So here, why people belong to different categories is a very important question that we need to answer. Now, if you look at the classification of creations as a human being, there are three types of people leadership came in the past. The one category is the prophets. That means they wanted to transform the world for next 1,000 years, be it Jesus Christ or Buddha or Muhammad. The second category of the people are the ones who want to make a big transformation in the mankind. Be it the internet inventor, Mr. Lee or Edison or Einstein. They are also human beings, but they are chosen to be a different contributor during their lifetime. And then the third category of people who are the business leaders who are really made a big significance, be it Steve Jobs or Toyota Motor Company or Jack Welch or whoever it is. They are also human beings, but they assumed a different kind of a position for themselves in this planet. If you look at it, why they did what they did is because of three aspects. One is the self-actualization. That is, everybody wants to achieve something more than what they are capable of. Or they are driven by the parental conditioning or the social pressure. But they assume different positions. And if you look at the human attribute, I have classified some people I have seen. They have got a positive outlook and they have very high self-esteem. They have got good people management skills, high level of comprehension capabilities. At the same time, we have people who have got an unfavorable attributes. They are very pessimistic. They have got a poor self-management. They are very poor in their social skills and so on. So, why there is so much of distinction between the human being is an important question I was trying to answer in this book. And also in my own corporate career in consulting, I found there are few people at the very early age they become CEOs or CFOs or CXOs and they lead the organization. It's a very important thing to see how they have groomed themselves for those kind of positions. Few of the concepts for want of time I would like to quickly explain. How do we grow? So we grow in our stature by developing our technical knowledge. As many of us are thinking, if I become a domain expert, I can grow. But for some people, they want to lead the organizations. They don't want to get stuck with any technical kind of a competency. That means there's a trade-off between one become a technical expert or they become a organizational leaders. So in my book I have explained about one interesting concept, how some people grow in the organization. Career growth is a function of value creation. This is a very interesting equation. It is not a mathematical equation, but how people have grown in the organization. Those who are creating more value to the organization, they grow faster. That means, what do you mean by value creation? They contribute for the growth of the organization. They contribute for the profit or perpetuity of the organization. Many of them are not concerned about the organizational results. And if you see what is the value creation is a function of personal equity. Now I just coined this term personal equity. It is something like a share price of a company which is at the face value is 10 rupees and it increases as the company performs better. In the same way, anybody entering their career as a trainee, their personal equity is very low. But as they are developing their personal equity by knowledge and the ability to perform, they create more values. So moving forward, what really composes of personal equity is the two aspects what my research has shown. One is the utility and multiplied by convenience. The reason why I put it in the mathematical format is utility is how multifunctional that person is, how far multi-skilled that person is. Higher the multi-skills he has, greater will be his utility. For example, if you see an old Nokia phone, you can only make call and receive call. But whereas today, if you have any modern smartphone, virtually it is a computer for you. You can perform every task that you would like to do it. That means higher the utility, higher the value. convenience refer, there are many people do not have the ability to flow with the organization. It is very difficult to extract work from them. They are moody, they are absenteeism, and you cannot predict them. They are not reliable. It's not very convenient for the leadership team to extract work from them. So please consider this equation as we go along in our concept of pragmatic leadership. So having said that, one more aspect is that many people always don't want to accept responsibility. They generally ask that what is there in it for me? There's a VFIM that one of the company, our client DHL called what is there in it for me syndrome. That means they don't accept responsibility. But those who are not accepting responsibility, they don't grow. Responsibility comes first and the growth comes later. Very, very unfortunate, but that's the way it is. So going forward about the human faculties, we have a strong memory, we have imagination, we have intuition, we have conscience, and then we have got the willpower to focus our concentration. Why I am mentioning this? Because many of the creations below the rung of human being don't have these 5 faculties. An animal doesn't have these 5 faculties. But the human creation has got these faculties. So whether we are using these faculties for really making progress in our capability is $1 million question. How do we dissipate our energy? The memory is used for storing all past information. And most of the time we suffer because of what happened in our life. Or we imagine that something bad will happen in the future. So our imagination is not used for a constructive purpose, but they are generally used for worrying habit. So unfortunately we have no idea how our energy is getting dissipated. So the last question I just want to answer before I adjourn the session, whether leaders are born or developed, it's an important question to answer as per my own understanding after 52 years of very close interaction with the human beings. Let us look at it a little more in detail. If you look at the great leaders, I've just put some of their pictures. They live life fully with a lot of exuberance. They have mastered their subconscious mind and their control. They are very creative, focused, assertive, risk-taking, unstoppable, and so on. You will find that these are all some characters of human being which can be developed if you are really conscious of moving forward in your life. So I am of the strong view that leaders are not born. Leaders are developed partially, and if you look at the further concepts as I was interacting with many industries, many of the leaders are transactional leaders. That means they maintain the status quo. They are not transformational leaders. So there is a subtle difference between transactional leader and transformational leader. So transactional leader just maintains the status quo and transformational leader creates team and builds institution. Stephen Covey has said leaders are not born or made. They are self-made. That means if you are conscious about sharpening your leadership skills, you can develop certain habits which I have discussed in my book in greater detail. So in other words, we look at human being based on what results they have achieved and some of their behaviors, but we don't go deeper into the iceberg below the waterline. How do they manage their emotions? What is the quality of their thinking? What are the values that are driving their life? And what are the belief system that is driving their own behavior? There are many of these things are hidden, but all these are manifesting in the form of their behavior. So in other words, a pragmatic leadership is a concept which is essentially talking about the formation of human faculties and application. Now in my book, what I did actually, I just did this development of leadership capability in 3 parts. Basically, personal leadership is the starting point. Personal leadership is essentially, am I leading myself? That's what is the starting point of any leadership. If I can't lead myself, I cannot lead anyone. Second is, am I a good team leader? There are many people who are very good in their managing themselves, but they are not good in working in a team. And there are people very good as a team leader, but they are not a good organizational leadership. What I found in my own consulting career, there are many people, they can't even become team leaders. Even at the age of 45, they don't have any subordinates under them. And there are people who have come up to the functional leaders, but they could not become organization leaders because the skill sets of these three levels are entirely different. So in my book, I have discussed this in greater detail. And most important part of this whole concept is there in this particular visual. Let me explain very quickly. The whole skill sets of any developing person is divided into three parts. One is the technical skill, people management skills, and conceptual skills. What is technical skills? When I join a company, if I am going to do a computer programming, I am being taught certain language and how to do the coding, etc. That is what technical skill is all about. But at some particular point, I have 10 people under me. I will have to set the task for them and manage them. Then I need to know how to manage people. Technical skills and people management skills are entirely different. Unfortunately, in our education or any other social conditioning, we have never been taught what is people management skill is all about. And further, when you become a vice president or executive vice president or CEO or CXO at the strategic level, you need to have a very sharp conceptual skills. Conceptual skill is nothing but imagining about the future possibility and then creating it. That's what conceptual skill is all about. Now, if you look at the line at the bottom, this is the way I represented this particular concept. At the lower level of management, when we join as a trainee, you can see this line is falling almost 80% in the technical skill zone. That means we need predominantly technical skills and we need a small portion of people management skills and we also need a very small portion of conceptual skills. But when you come to the middle level management, as you could see in the dotted line, your technical skill reduces but people management skill increases and your conceptual skill further increases. And when you become the top of the company, then obviously your technical skill becomes almost redundant or irrelevant. Your people management skill is important. And then is a large portion is the conceptual skills. So please go through this in greater detail if you happen to read my book. I have explained the transition, how it is done, and what kind of competencies we need to develop. So that means for technical skill, intelligent quotient is important. For people management skill, emotional quotient is important. Subsequently, learning quotient is very important, relationship quotient is very important. And spiritual quotient, that means how principle-centered person you are. If you are not principle-centered, as we are listening in the recent past, leaders who held the leadership position of third largest stock exchange of the world proved to be of very poor spiritual quotient. So it's extremely important as we are growing in our leadership. I have quickly explained the various principles centricity in my book. I'm not going to go into the detail. And I've spoken about how do you develop your motivation from the extrinsic motivation, expecting from outside world to motivate you. How do you motivate yourself internally? That's called intrinsic motivation. I have challenged some of these paradigms in my book. How do you manage stresses? Because as you go higher up in the organization ladder, your responsibility will increase, failure modes will increase. So obviously, if you are not able to manage your stress, you will not be able to sustain those positions and make sensible decisions. I've also spoken about contribution, that how do you feel that you need to contribute for the institution building. And also developed the learning quotient, how do you sharpen your learning abilities so that you are in a continuous learning mode in your entire career. And also spoken about the team leadership skills in my book extensively, and how do you develop them. And finally, when you take over the organizational leadership, how do you manage changes? How do you develop the competencies for wealth creation? And how are you trying to develop the structure, system, culture of the organization? These are all entirely different skills for a leader. And I have also spoken about some of the great leaders like McNamee, how he turned around the Boeing company from its own kind of a situation it came in, and how do you become a balanced leader for managing various aspects of the business, and also the performance parameters, KPIs, how do you formulate vision strategy, and then how do you convert the organization into a performing organization. Before I conclude the last few words, I have given some of the reading, the most interesting books that you can read, which I have used as a reference in some of my concepts I developed in my book. So that is all I wanted to share. I think I just managed time, whatever was given to me. And if you have any questions, I'll be in a position to try to answer that.
Thank you very much, NC. This was a wonderful talk. I was really impressed by you personally. This comes across right, but it sounds like you're self-taught, and the subject that you address is about as broad as you can possibly be, and yet you've built this model that's beautiful, and it's very good. I think a lot of that was done through your smartness. So
thank you.
That's hard work and thinking about this for such a long time. So thank you for sharing. It was very, very valuable for our employees. And one of the things about iPlace is we try very, very hard to have a culture where everybody can move into senior leadership and senior management positions, because we're growing very fast, and as I'm sure you know, no company will grow fast and be successful if it doesn't have good leaders and managers. So we ask our people to question everything. They should always understand the why, not just not just do what they're told. And if they're doing something and they don't know why and it's not adding value, we encourage people to talk to their boss. They can talk to me, but they should know what they're doing. And I just loved your model of how when you grow in a company, you grow from those skills to people skills to conceptual skills. That's a great thing that I hope all the iPlacers are thinking about, and thinking about how they can apply that to their own careers. So just thank you for imparting so much wisdom to the company. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for giving this opportunity. I appreciate it.